Zen, the OG digital agency in Brussels.
And live from Brussels, it's ZN Live. Right, and today it's episode 379. That's right. I'm Phil Weiss, CEO and founder of ZN, and I have as my co-host today the artist, creative genius, and COO of ZN, Jesus Azogue. And we are very excited to have a very special guest today because Kriticos is actually a former student of ours, so it feels very special. And who's somebody who is exceptionally talented and has done a number of different things. He is a creator, a musician, an entrepreneur, an activist. He's basically got a very kind of fluid profile. But one of the things that I'm really interested and excited about is his book club, which is really interesting. I've been following it online. He's been doing a lot of events in lots of different places, but it's a very original and different book club. So Kriticos, welcome to the show. What is that book club all about and why is it so different from other book clubs?
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. The book club is a book club for people that didn't read the book. And so people that read the book can join and people that didn't read the book can join. And we'll still be on the same level of respect and the same level of value during the conversation, which is very rare in other book clubs, because most book clubs you need to read to chapter 5 or something before you can participate. And this just brings the level, the barrier down, and so anyone can join, and it's really fascinating. You can sit down with people from different backgrounds, different generations, with different interests, the goal with the book club is to make reading and books cool again.
So I have a friend actually from San Francisco. I saw her last week, and she said she was part of a podcast club because all these people were not reading books, so they just were discussing podcasts. Now, so why did you come up with this idea? I mean, was it because you were seeing people not reading enough and you wanted to bring books in front of them, or you felt there's a need for more discussions on book? What was the motivation, and how's the journey been so far?
The motivation was really, I've always loved reading books. I've been passionate about reading. I've been an avid reader since like the age of 3. And I just never really found a lot of people that read books. And so when I'd read books and find passages that I thought were interesting to discuss, or books that I thought were interesting to discuss with people, I would try to get them to read the book and then we can discuss it later on, but they'd never read the book. And so what I did was I've actually got a book with me right now. It's called Friendaholic by Elizabeth Day. And so what I do is I underline a passage and I say, okay, if you haven't read the book, let's at least talk about this paragraph right here. And they're able to do that. And so that's really how the idea works. Anyone can talk about like the ideas that are talked about within a book, but it seems quite intimidating to get through a whole 300 pages, right? And so that's really what it is. I just wanted to talk about books with my friends that didn't read the books, and so far, I've recently realized that it's a novel idea, and with that, I'm able to do this with different books, with different people, in different spaces, and the journey's been pretty good. It's been pretty smooth sailing, which I'm very happy about. I've hosted in different countries and different environments. And you want me to expand on that?
Well, I love this idea, and the fact that you want to make books accessible. And I think a lot of people have this kind of block where they think, oh, I don't have time to read, and so then they get a bit intimidated. And I love the fact that you're allowing them to join the conversation without necessarily having read it. Now, I want to ask you about some of your experiences. I've been, following the things you've been posting. You went to corporates, but you also went into a prison. So how did that happen, and what was the experience?
Wow, that was really cool. With the corporates, it was pretty straightforward. I was hosting book clubs for different communities and different social members clubs. And at one of the social members clubs, there was a person that worked at Netflix that was there. The head of PR at Netflix invited me to host a book club for her team. And that is when I had to make a VAT number and start this as a business. And since then, I've been hosting for I hosted for Netflix, for Nike, for the British Council, and countless other companies. But yeah, the most important thing for me was to get into prison because um, I've always wanted to ask different questions to people that have seen different sides of life, and I don't think that there's much people. I don't think there's many people in this waking life and like the hustle and bustle that we go through every day that have the same perspective of people that are facing life in jail or that are facing 10 years. And so I was performing in Leuven prison, because Leuven has this festival every year that the whole city gets to enjoy, and even the prisoners have are able to have people come perform music for them. And so I was performing music in the prison with a friend of mine, and when we were booked, I knew immediately, oh, this is my moment. So I pitched the idea right before we got on stage, and they loved the idea. The people that booked us loved the idea. They said we could have a meeting again. We had a meeting like a month later, and since then I've been hosting a series of book clubs in Leuven prison every December. And this year I'm getting into a new prison in Brussels. And so far it's been prisoners in Brussels in Leuven that are either facing life, facing over 10 years, or people that are waiting their trial. And it's really interesting. It's changed my life. I'm not a practicing Muslim, nor am I a Muslim, but I've started doing Ramadan ever since I started doing the sessions, because we got into conversations about like our love for God, or love in general. And in prison, this guy told me that when he does Ramadan, he feels free. He feels like he's not constrained. He's not stuck in between these four walls. He feels like he's generally free. It's just him and Allah. And since then, I was like, well, I was really moved. And so I said, I'm going to practice Ramadan just to see what he's talking about, because it's so beautiful. And I did. And since then, I've been, I'm not Muslim, but I just practice Ramadan every year. And on other things, other levels, it's just something very beautiful to get into an intimate conversation with somebody that sort of feels like they've been forgotten by the society and only has time to think about what they've done. And you don't ask them about what they did. You ask them about their ideas on love. You ask them about their ideas of masculinity, about femininity, and things that that us humans would usually talk about in the real world. And it's really fascinating to see them light up like that. Yeah.
I I wanted to jump here because actually, well, the book as as an element, as an object, okay, has been kind of transformed in the last 30 years. In this as well, still we have books that are on paper, but also there are varieties of them, like going on thanks to the digital transformation, like ebooks. You have audiobooks. You have the PDFs. So there are, you have a versions of short, versions of long books, so they tell you very in short what the book is about. You have podcasts, you have, so actually at the end of the day, there has been a big transformation around the book, also in the way of creating and publishing, and also consuming. And in this front, on consuming side, have you seen a tendency or a trend of people not necessarily using the paper version of the book, but coming like, hey, yes, I read the book, but actually I listened to it on as an audiobook? And do you see also difference between the people who actually read it on paper or they hear that? Do you have some views on that?
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, it's a huge trend. A lot of people are getting more into audiobooks. A lot of people are getting into ebooks. It's a really popular thing because it's very accessible. You can have an ebook on your phone or audiobook on your phone. You can have it on your iPad or on there's this device, I forgot what it's called. It's with the Z.
Oh,
It's not
The Kindle, not the
Kindle. No,
on
it's
the
Z.
Kindles, yeah.
Okay.
Or on the Kindle. And yeah, I've seen a lot of people getting into those more. But at the book clubs, I noticed that there are purists, and I see the difference between the purists. Most of them are students, and most of them are either just people that are passionate about reading in general. Compared to the ones that usually get into audiobooks or ebooks, those are people that are in the working market, and are either above the age of 35. They feel like they don't have enough time to carry on the book with them all the time, so they have the ebook or the audiobook. And I'd say if it's younger people that have ebooks or audiobooks, it's mainly people that that are sort of new to reading. So they're not avid readers, so they very much would rather have the easy access of just having on their phones rather than going out and buying a book. Yeah, that's what I'd say would be the main difference.
Yeah, actually, we have a comment from Leora saying, "Hi everyone, my son is reading a 1,200 pages Chinese book on his phone." I assume it's not in Chinese. Is that the three-body problem? Because I feel that that's the Chinese book that many people are reading, although I don't think it's illegal in China. But coming back to your point, Kriticos, I think that reading physical books is quite a special experience. I like to read on audiobook, on Kindle, but I do think that having a physical book has something special when you sit, you open it, you read, you might underline, etc. And so I like to combine it, whether it's reading the book, whether it's reading the Kindle version, because it just allows you to say, well, I read that book and I can go back to it later. And it's kind of like a hook. And also, I think books are incredibly democratic. I mean, you can get books, you can get secondhand books, and you can have them. And I think just having them around you, even if you're not a big reader, is stimulating. And I think you feel like opening once in a while and just checking out a page. But coming back to your book club, I feel that it's actually really a conversation club. You're talking about books, but what you're really doing is you're bringing people to talk about things. And I want to have your feeling. We're in a very polarized moment in history. We've seen this in the US. We're seeing it in Europe. People are struggling to have meaningful conversations on topic they disagree on. So I wonder, do you feel that people are hungry for conversations? Are you surprised in how they approach, maybe opposing views on difficult topics? How do you feel about conversations in today's society?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First of all, I'd like to add that it's really fascinating to have a book with you because they end up being artifacts. You could have a book that your grandfather had, and it just has the essence and the life of having lived. Anyway, but as for the conversation club concept, it's very much that people that come that haven't read the book. We end up having really intimate, very intimate conversations. It's not rare for people to come to the book club and end up crying. And we're in a group of 15 to 20 strangers, but they end up feeling safe enough to cry or safe enough to open up on different topics. And this is just a psychological thing, but if you're in an argument with somebody and you're sat next to them or sat at the same table as them, you're less likely to get aggressive. And you're more likely to have a constructive way of communicating your qualms with the person. And that's what I've noticed at the book club. Although people do disagree on different topics, they end up sort of having very respectful ways of communicating their disagreement, and it's very, very beautiful to see. But especially with the concept of not the concept, but the fact that we're in a really very polarizing time in history right now. It puts a lot of responsibility on me as the curator and the host of these book clubs to figure out how we can have these conversations. But also considering the fact that this is a post-pandemic world that we're living in, a lot of people are very, very hungry for a conversation. I had the idea of the book club in 2019, and then I was hosting book clubs, and in 2020, the pandemic happened, lockdown, etc. And I re-sparked that fire in 2021, and that's when I really saw a surgence for. That's how it became where it is today. And I think it's not lost on me the fact that we're sort of deprived of intimate conversations with people in real life. That is what really sparked up the need, and that's why people come time and time again. And it's very rare. Most events, especially with young people or even older people, end up involving music, end up involving drinks or things that sort of distract you to having an actual connection with the person. And so this sort of brings it back to a level where it's like, you're just sharing with the person is just an exchange of minds. And it's very beautiful. Of course, it's based on the topics that are touched upon within the books. But at the end of the day, like you said, it ends up being mainly about the conversation.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And, as we're saying, this is a time where we need better conversations, because people are becoming very polarize on issues where they just stand at opposing ends instead of trying to understand what the commonalities are. We have an election coming up. In fact, we have 4 elections. We have European, regional, Belgium. We have local later on. I know you've been active in kind of engagement. So what's your message to getting people more involved in politics so that they vote, and be more tolerant of different ideas and different opinions?
I was going to build up on this with the conversation club thing you said, and a lot of people do have ideas and do have different issues that are going on with, what they want to express verbally, but they only have the choice of sharing it online, and it doesn't feel like it's enough. You share it on your story, you share it on your post, you might get into an argument with somebody in a DM or in the inboxes, but it doesn't feel like you're actually doing something. But to have a conversation with the person face to face, see their reactions, and hear other people opposing your ideas or agreeing with your ideas, that really does something to you. And to respond to what you just said, I think it's important to actually do something. I think voting is we feel very powerless in the times that we're in right now. But I think voting is it's one of the ways that we can make change. We can make change in different ways, but I think voting is really important to get educated on what the different parties and different politicians stand for, where their values lie, what they have done, and what they plan on doing once they get elected is very important as well. And honestly, I think it's very important to think for yourself, because another election that's happening this year is the U.S. election, and just to make a parallel with the Democrats and the Republicans, they're very stuck in their political parties. You could find somebody that's a Democrat just because their grandfather was or their parents are, but they don't know what the Democratic Party stands for exactly. They just are Democrats because that's what they identify as. And I think it's very important to bring back the idea of thinking for yourself and doing research for yourself. And then when you cast a vote, making sure that you can stand behind it, not just because you're doing it because your family lineage did it, or because you live in a certain city, because your friends are voting for something. And I think that's it's empowering. It's the most powerful it's the most power that we can have as a citizen, rather than somebody that's an activist, etc. I hope that.
No, absolutely. And look, I think this is really important. And, I think a lot of people think, yeah, I should vote. But I think it's important to vote mindfully and to realize that this is a great moment in the history of your democracy wherever you live, because you get to do that symbolic action that reminds you that you're in charge at the end of the day. I think so. That's one thing. The second thing is we're involved in a campaign to raise awareness for the international community in Brussels, which is huge. 65% of people in Brussels are non-Belgian born. And so this is the most cosmopolitan democracy in the world, which, a lot of people are not aware of. And we want to encourage that community to be more involved in the election, so to vote, but also, and this is also very interesting, in the local election, which is coming up in October. So people are not discussing it that much. But in Belgium, that's incredibly important. Actually, decisions about the police, about the schools, about the bicycle lanes, about a lot of things that really affect your day-to-day are made at the commune more than in most other countries. So you can vote there, but also you can turn up at meetings and you can express yourself. I think a lot of people like to complain, but if you say, well, look, if you want to change that, then go and do something, turn up, engage. And then people go like, oh yeah, but it's kind of easier to complain. So I think there is a lot of opportunity to participate. And I think that's really something that, I just like to remind people coming up on the 9th. So please register, vote. And as you said, Kriticos, think about why you're voting and what you can do to improve your society, your community. Now, I want to come back to on a different topic. You were a student at Odyssey. We were very happy to have you. And you were a very active student. You were already developing your online brand, your music, doing a number of different things. And I just want to you to, for students now who are graduating this year, what is your advice on how they should approach this. A little bit about how they can build their online profile, but also about career choices. Because obviously you've made a very unusual choice. You're building your own project, and that's very scary for a lot of people. They think, oh my God, I have to get a job. Life is terrible. Crisis everywhere. What's your advice, personal branding and career approach?
Thank you, and yeah, I want to say I had a really great time being your student, and
Thank you.
one thing I learned during those classes and with my peers, you'd always give us the task of understanding our brand. First of all, acknowledging that we are a brand with our social media pages, then understanding what our brand looks like, and then figuring out how to pivot that into a direction that we want to go into, and align our brand image, which is our Instagram pages, our LinkedIn, etc., to that direction that we're trying to go towards. And I think that's really important. I think it's important to first acknowledge what your values are, what you stand for, etc., and then figure out what you'd like to portray to the world. Because we live in a very digital world. I'm working on the website for the book club, but it's actually really fascinating when I realize that everything I've been able to do with the book club is through social media. It's the Instagram page and LinkedIn. It's crazy. And I've had these clients, I'm able to do these things and travel. I'm going to Finland to host a book club next week. And all of this started through social media. And I just want to reiterate the importance of digital marketing and the importance of a self-brand is really, you can't neglect that. And as Jesus said earlier, there's a pivot from traditional reading to digital, and it's a very real thing. People do pay attention to the digital. A lot of people that are working in big companies do pay attention to these things. Now I'm going to get to what they can do. I think the way I always viewed university and college is that it's only something that will give me tools to do what I want to do. So if I'm doing something already that I like, which I was doing, I was selling hoodies, I was also doing music. I'm doing something that I like. I go to class and I understand how to do that thing better. And whatever you want to study, we were studying marketing and business management, so it's very much aligned to giving us tools to how to run a business, or start a business. Yeah, I'd give that same advice to anyone else. If you have a passion, I think it's very important. Instead of just, of course, it's good to get a job and to be an employee. But if you want to pave a way for yourself in some way, I think it's important to realize that school is just there to give you tools and give you a better understanding of how that world works. And if you can apply it to what you want to do, I think that's the best way to view it. And once you view it like that, studying, homework, and all these essays and stuff like that don't seem as tedious as they would if you were just doing it to get a good grade.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and the way you've been following, your own curiosity, trying different things, and I think finding something that nobody, including you, could have guessed that this is what you would have been doing. So, I like this exploration, and I think people should definitely try this as much as they can. All right, now on to the recommendations. So, Kriticos, what is your book recommendation for our listeners and viewers today?
Today, my book recommendation is 1984 by George Orwell. It is a book that was written in the 1940s, but it's a book that really shines light on the dystopian universe that we live in, and the way the zeitgeist works. I think it's very fascinating, and it could change a lot of. It's an eye opener for anyone that wants to read it.
Yeah, fantastic, and it's a great exploration of surveillance society, fascism, but also how you use this pervasive technology to watch everyone. They didn't have AI though. I wonder, if he had thought about that, what it would have looked like. But fascinating book. Jesus, you have a tech recommendation.
Yes, I'm not coming with books, but I'm coming with tech, on the space always of the extended realities, in the light of what is happening, because that Apple is maybe presenting or launching the Vision Pro here in Europe, hopefully soon in some days. I hope. I cross fingers. On the other hand, there is Meta already who is making a full change in terms of the the OS and the way that people can interact with that, a bit inspired on what is happening on Apple Vision Pro. But if you cannot get the Apple Vision Pro and you want to test more or less what is the way of approaching this, or to work with the applications there on the mixed reality, there is an application that is very cheap and that you can buy on Meta, and it's quite cool because you have the feeling as if you were wearing a Vision Pro. It's called the special app. Okay, be careful because there are different applications that have almost the same name. So this one is the spatial app. Okay, and actually permits you then to have applications there like circles in the middle of your room or the space that you are in mixed reality, and it's really cool to use. Actually, since I installed it, I'm using it every day for many things, because you can use it to browse, to open your notes, to have all the Microsoft tools there, mainly web based applications, but really cool. Just check.
I will definitely check it out, and we have the link in case you don't know. It's been shared on our channels. My book recommendation this week is The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. Big book, which I'm listening to as an audiobook, so it's taking a while. It is, of course, it's a classic. It's fantastic. I did Tolstoy a few months ago, so I went through Anna Karenina, which was really fascinating. I think Dostoevsky is a lot darker, but again, an amazing exploration of human psychology, religion, philosophy, the meaning of everything, and our deep, dark secrets and drives. So a very good book. And, Kriticos, I completely agree with you. I think we want to make books more accessible, more interesting, and I don't think people should feel that they have to read everything in the book to get an experience of the book, and then they can go to it gradually and have moments where they can kind of get deeper. But it was fantastic to have you on the show. Looking forward to following your story online, continuing this discussion, and have a fantastic weekend. We hope the weather will get better, but it's not looking that great so far. But hopefully we will have summer at some point. Have a fantastic weekend. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.